All right, so before we begin, I would just like to state for the record that today is March 1st, 2023, and my name is Ben Bauman, and I am in Indianapolis, Indiana, speaking via phone with John Frenz, who is located in Vincennes, Indiana. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we are doing an interview for the Indiana Legislative Oral History Initiative. So just starting off, when and where were you born?
I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 11/15/55, 111555.
All right, great. And what were your parents' names?
My parents' names?
Yes.
Okay. George E. Frenz and Myra J. Kaiser was their maiden name, Kaiser.
Okay. And how did you get to Indiana?
When I graduated from college, I started in restaurant management and started in Wisconsin, was moved to Clinton, Iowa, Freeport, Illinois, Davenport, Iowa, Henderson, Kentucky, and then went together with another manager, and we bought our own location in Madison, Indiana, and then Vincennes, Indiana, and that's where I reside since August 1st of 81.
Okay. And do you have any siblings?
I have 9 brothers and sisters. Just one has passed away.
Okay.
So it's a good Catholic family.
Yeah, okay, sure. And how would you describe your childhood?
Excuse me?
How would you describe your childhood?
Oh, I was right in the middle. I was number 6 of the 10, and you had to learn to cooperate, negotiate, and I think that actually helped once into politics, was learning to deal with so many brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I bet. Makes sense. So who were the most influential people then in your childhood?
Oh, my mother, she was into politics, or she wasn't, never ran for office, but she was a poll watcher, and she's always into it. I still remember when I was young, the 1960 presidential campaign of Kennedy versus Nixon, and my dad was always was a hardcore Republican. My mom was middle of the road, went back and forth.
Okay.
And she was talking about how important it was for my dad to vote for Kennedy. I still remember that, and I was just a 5-year-old or 4 or 5-year-old then. But I still remember that mom pushing for Kennedy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. And let's see. So, where did you go to college?
I went to St. Thomas University in St. Paul, Minnesota. My major was journalism with emphasis in political science.
Ah, okay.
In a journalism degree, you had to pick an emphasis, and I picked political science. I loved it.
Yeah.
Interesting. University of St. Thomas is a lot larger now than it was then, but they had a lot of the professors, teachers were people in the business that would come and teach those classes. So you'd have the local newscasters, and you'd have people that were into city planning and such, putting the classes on. So you're learning from the people firsthand on city planning and things like that. Back then, Minneapolis, St. Paul went into a metro area similar to what Indianapolis went into for all Marion County being one government except the pre-existing cities. But in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the counties were much smaller, but it's a 7-county government entity there over Minneapolis, St. Paul still exists today that has some of the powers that the cities don't have or take care of because it's a huge area.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
So I learned about that, so it was no surprise to me when I moved to Indiana about the Indianapolis metro area. And same thing, Louisville was another one of the early on cities that did that metro consolidation.
Yeah. Let's see, were you involved in any extracurricular activities when you were in college?
I was with the photography and stuff for the yearbook and the student newspaper, and then with the college radio station was involved with that.
Yeah. What were your goals after graduation?
Well, I got out, graduated 77, and that was back right after Watergate, and the journalism field was very difficult to land a job in. It didn't pay that well. And I had worked years in high school. My side job was working restaurant business, and I decided to go into restaurant management. It paid a lot better than the journalism degree did.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. In what ways did your awareness of politics change when you were in college?
Oh, I was the main thing in the political science classes was learning setting up budgets, setting up city planning, things like that, where, when you set up a city for proper amount of park green space per square mile, went through the different cities, how they did those plannings, the different types of the city governments, from everything from city managers to mayors, city councils, things like that. But the main thing was you'd learn in class was how to hear the other people's point of view and try to put it all together for the best that got what you were looking for and satisfying the other people.
Yeah.
It was interesting, you'd go through where the professor would sign the city budget and work it out and possible grants and things like that, and you had to put it together. You worked in groups. You come together and make your presentation, and the class would vote for the best budget, things like that, where you just learned that type of, well, you can't get everything you want, but you can work towards it. Yeah,
that makes sense. Sure. Can you describe your employment history after college?
I went and worked for it was called Sirloin Stockade. It was a national chain of little budget steakhouses, and went into management there. And that stated prior, first place I worked was Marshfield, Wisconsin, then transferred to a training facility that do training at Clinton, Iowa, then management in Freeport, Illinois, and then down to Bettendorf, Davenport, the Quad Cities area of Illinois, Iowa there, then down to Henderson, Kentucky, and then that's when went together with another manager and we bought into the business, our own franchise.
Wow, okay, yeah. When, if at all, did you get married?
In 87.
Okay. And do you have any children?
2 boys. One born 89, one in 91. One lives in Bloomington, Indiana. The other lives at Indianapolis. One went to Purdue, one went to IU.
Oh, wow, okay. Interesting. So that classic Indiana split, I guess.
Yeah.
So when did you decide to become more seriously involved in Indiana politics?
I always followed politics, always. From the first time I could vote on, always watched politics, interested. When in 96, or excuse me, it'd be more 95, it would have been. In 95, Rick McConnell was the state representative for District 64, which I lived from Vincennes south, most of Gibson County, just a tiny sliver of the south of Davies, the western portion of Pike County, and then just one township in Posey County on its northwest corner. But anyways, Rick, I was talking to him at the county fair, and he had told me that he wasn't going to run for re-election. He was going to run for Congress in 96. And I said, do you think I ought to run? He says, go for it. You got to get going right away. And so, because that was fairly new information.
Yeah.
And so went home, talked to my wife, and went the next day to John Gregg's law office, introduced myself, and said that I was interested in running for that District 64. And John was, at that time, was going through recruitment all around the state to go take back the House after they lost it in 94. And he wanted me to get going. That's what he wanted, was more business and leadership type people being involved to run, a better chance of winning. I went on to over to Jack Waldrop, who was at that time the, like the party boss in Knox County.
Yeah.
And he was on his rocking chair on the front of his porch, introduced myself and told him that I wanted to run. And he went through a whole interview and said, well, John, I'll support you. And then I went down to Gibson County to his name, Eney Marr, and he was like the political Democrat boss of Gibson County. Introduced myself and told him I wanted to run and everything. And he said, well, I'm off to call Jack and check and see, but I like you. And but I did it as quick as I could, went and introduced myself to the people that, you know what I'm talking about, the party bosses.
Sure.
They're not elected, but they're the ones that help guide the parties.
Yeah. And
by the time it was like about 3 weeks later before it came out publicly that seat was going to be an open seat, and other people who thought about running went, and they were getting we already have somebody running.
Yeah.
And I was able to go into the primary unopposed for the Democrat nomination in 94 there.
Wow. So I guess no one wanted to try to run against you then. They felt that you had a pretty good established connection to party leadership. Right. And
yeah, because I'd already got the endorsement from John Gregg and Jack Waldrop and Eney Marr.
Yeah.
And two of them are no longer alive now, but the important one to me was getting John Gregg's endorsement.
Yeah.
So when the other candidates went to John, asked him about it, John says, well, we got our candidate already. I'm not saying you can't run, but we got our pick.
Yeah.
So that was, I would guess it was just because what I had learned in school about political science, how important it was ASAP to get out there to the people that have the power and let them know your intent.
Yeah, makes sense. So, did you have a campaign strategy at all in the election when you're going against the Republican candidate?
Yeah, let's see, the Republican candidate, Robert Craig, and Craig with a K. And he's currently a judge down in Gibson County. But he ran against him, and we just did working with my friends and stuff. We went door to door, every house in every city in the district, and knocked on the doors and said hi and handed, the pamphlet to them, or hung the pamphlet on the door handle if they weren't home. But we just went out, as many things that we could go to church banquets and breakfasts and farm bureau, anything we could find that where we could go and meet people and introduce ourselves.
Yeah, okay. So did you have any interesting experiences going to door?
Oh, of course, you'd learn real quick that if they wanted to talk a lot about everything, they were probably not for you, and don't waste your time.
Yeah.
The people that were all for you and everything would just say hi, yep, I'm for you, or and you move on. But you just learn to move quickly and don't waste time.
Yeah.
You got a lot of doors to knock on.
Yeah, makes sense.
And people, some areas, there was people that come and say, this is the first time I've ever had a candidate knock on my door. I'm going to vote for you, and there'd be some of those small towns where they're pretty well ignored. But, this is the first time I was running, so we were trying to hit every door we could.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Were there any things that you tried to campaign for or against when you were running?
No big issues. It was just to represent the people, fair property tax, more funds for education, the funds to provide free school books, which is sort of funny, as it looks like they might even pass that law this year. But no, it's just along the issues. When you're a new candidate, you just can be pretty broad.
Yeah. What did you think of the election process?
Well, it's been the same for a long time.
Yeah.
It was widespread district, because you get out to the rural areas to split by a number of voters, so it could be really spread out. Mine was pretty spread out, had portions of 5 counties.
Right. What was your reaction when you found out that you won the election?
It was pretty exciting. We won pretty handedly. I guess one of the funny things was the Saturday before the election, we were working neighborhoods in the city of Princeton where it was sort of a split type vote, Republican Democrat area, so we figured we had to hit there again. That was the second time we were hitting the doors there. And I had one of my best friends would go across the street and ring doorbells, and I'd be on across, and if the people wanted to talk to me, I could just trot across the street and say hi, and otherwise we just waved and thing. But he knocked on one door, and it was my opponent. Robbie Craig was home with his kids watching cartoons on a Saturday morning.
Oh my gosh.
That just made my day. But Rob's a great guy, super nice guy. He's a judge down there in Gibson County now. He's a super guy, but that was sort of funny there.
Yeah, so I guess you did not get his vote. So.
Yeah. At that time, the district was probably about 56-44 Democrat.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
It's no longer. Now it's a solid Republican district. That many people have changed over.
Right. Did you change your campaign strategies at all for future elections?
Yeah, because pretty much the same as those issues are what people remember at home, was property tax and school.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issues.
Right. Now, I think I read something when I was doing research for this interview that you had ran against Eric Holcomb at one point?
Yeah, that was in the year 2000 election. My second re-election in 98, I was unopposed.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2000, Eric Holcomb was a staffer for Congressman Hostetler, and he wanted to run for office, and they started a campaign, and it was a lot of money in it, and it just happened to be one of those target races. Both sides spent lots of money on the advertising and the mailers and such, but the famous one, of course, was this was the weekend before the election. It was a Friday. The Vincent Sun commercial, the Princeton Clarion, and the Posey County Weekly. There was half-page ads in there about my supporting the bestiality and pedophiles and sexual misconduct and things like that.
Right.
And if you read the cut line on there, it backs up for HB 1001, which you know and I know is the budget bill.
Yeah.
And in the budget bill was the financing for Indiana University. And in Indiana University has the Kinsey Institute Library, because Kinsey practiced there at IU, and they've kept a library of all his research material. So therefore I support those topics.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sat there, read that, and I started laughing, and I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I made humor out of it, and every place I talked, I brought up the ad myself and told about how crazy it is, and it's pretty bad when the candidate resorts to something like that. And I won very handedly. That election was a big surprise, and some people wonder how many votes that cost Holcomb on that ad.
Yeah.
Eric did not put that ad together. It was put together by someone else that brought it to his campaign and pushed that on there to be a good thing to run the weekend for election. Eric's a lot better person than that, and I truly believe that he had nothing to do with that ad.
Yeah.
But it just sort of backfired.
Yeah.
And but one thing for me, on that the election, Tuesday on election, I made it on the below the crease on page 1B of the Wall Street Journal had a column about the worst campaign strategies for that election, and I got my name in the Wall Street Journal, so I was pretty happy. And the campaign also made the Washington Post for the most money spent on campaigns in the United States.
Wow.
Washington Post also. So both those ones you can pull up on internet if you want to look at those. But the Washington Post has me, John Frenz, and has Indiana, or has Illinois instead of Indiana, but it's listed in that list there. So
Wow.
I was pretty happy to get my name listed in national papers.
Yeah, that's always interesting. Yeah. So how much money was spent in the campaign, in total on the campaign between you and Holcomb?
I don't know, but it was over $1 million.
Okay. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, between the two of us. I don't know the exact. I could dig it out if you need to, but
no, that's fine. So, did you know beforehand that this campaign was going to be so expensive?
No.
Okay.
No idea. No. It was, what was the presidential election that there? Was that 2000 would have been Bush
Bush Gore, or
Yeah, Bush Gore, right? Yep.
yeah, that's interesting. Wow. And so, do you think the amount of money spent kind of made that election more tense and stuff for both sides, or they felt more pressure to try to?
Yeah, the pressure and stuff, but it didn't. I don't think there's much change in the vote. It's just that you have to counter your opposition's advertising. So if the opponent had spent $20,000, you have to match it in advertising the counter their attack ads and such like that. But I don't think it changed much. The dollar amount changed much to the vote totals.
Yeah.
The only thing would be that since Vincennes is in the middle of, it's on the edge of Terre Haute Television's area and on the Evansville television area, so the city gets both Terre Haute and Evansville, so the campaigns bought lots of advertising both in Terre Haute and Evansville. And if I was down in Evansville, people would say hi to me and thought I was their state representative. Same thing in Terre Haute because I was on their TV so much.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to like a race where it's a Democrat versus a Republican, how big of a difference would you say the amount of money you spend makes in terms of getting votes? Because I guess, are you just really competing for swing voters then, or?
Yeah, you're competing for swing voters, but when the opponent is spending lots of money and they're doing attack ads, you have to counter that. And that's where it's important to match their expenditures to counter their attack ads.
Yeah.
Or not only counter attack ads, do attack ads back at them, so they have to worry more about their counter ads to your attack ads. I mean, it's a game of chess.
Yeah. That's interesting. So, what were you thinking when you first walked into the State House for your first day in office?
Well, it was 50-50, 50 Republicans, 50 Democrats in the Indiana House in '96. And it was Frank O'Bannon had won the governorship, so according to the House rules, or I'm not sure, it might be Constitution, the Speaker of the House is whichever the statewide official that won, whether the governor or the Secretary of State. And it was governor that year, so Democrats won that, so they got to choose the Speaker of the House. So John Gregg was voted in as Speaker of the House, and it was 50-50. They made that change back one time prior when it was 50-50, and they alternated Speakers of the House every other day, and that just didn't work out, so they changed that law to put that in. There'd just be one speaker.
Yeah.
And it was pretty interesting because every vote counted then because it was 50-50. And if a bill passed, there had to be at least one person cross the line on the votes. So it was a very, very interesting year. And the budget stalled at 50-50 and went into a special session to work out the budget that year.
Yeah. Interesting. So how'd you learn the ins and outs of the General Assembly?
Well, I was involved in high school with the student council, and in college worked with the college student council. I learned parliamentary procedure pretty good, and it's good to know that in certain situations when to your advantage. It's one of the best things to do is learn parliamentary procedure. So
yeah.
I remember doing that, and that having picked up with my journalism. knew how to write the PR pieces and articles and things like that, knew how to write speeches, things like that. That helped. But going in on the first term, learning a lot, and that was right when they started giving laptops to the representatives, a whole new thing. There'd probably be about, a third of the representatives used laptops, and the rest were still using the paper bills back then.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
People would start to send request letters by email and such, and there was a whole new thing, learning how to respond and quick responses, things like that. It was just, technology was changing.
Yeah. Did you have any political mentors at all when you served, or?
No, I just of course, John Gregg is who I always consulted with when I needed. I'm at a blank here on, I'll think of a second. He was a state representative from Fort Wayne, used to be Fort Wayne Mayor, Win Moses. Win Moses was one I always consulted with.
Okay.
There was several of the reps that had been there a long time that I'd gained good friendship with, and when it came down to how I should handle this, I would consult with them. They'd been through it 100 times, and they could tell you what you needed to do. You'd learn that when your bills was going to be called up before in committee, that how to prepare for it, and I would learn to go to the members of the committee ahead of time and say, hey, I got a bill coming up in a couple of days for your committee, and this is what this bill does. Do you have any questions? Handle things then, rather than waiting till committee for the surprise questions. You could get prepared for it and be ready to answer those questions in advance. And when you did that, your bill looked a lot better, and you had a better chance of getting passed.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm trying to think of what year it was. Whether it probably, I'm not sure, but it was for Toyota was going to do expansion, and they had filed their tax abatement paperwork a week late, and weren't eligible for their property tax abatement on the inventory and the buildings. And so I went and put legislation together to forgive them of that and allow that. And so I I was on Ways and Means, but went to the other key members of Ways and Means in advance and sat down, talked to them on it, and cleared all the questions, everything. Went in there and Ways and Means Committee, and here's all the press for this big bill to give tax abatement to Toyota and everything, and brought up the bill, and Pat Bauer was chairman, called if there were any questions, and there was no question. Passed unanimously. Here's the press going, how'd that happen? But
wow.
It's just a matter of when you have a bill coming up ahead, try to address the disagreements before it comes down to the vote.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably a wise strategy to avoid issues later.
Yeah.
So how do you keep track of the needs and wants of your constituents?
Mainly, you get phone calls on things, and you did the surveys and see if there's any surprises. Most of the surveys you could figure out ahead of time and they'd match up every once in a while. It'd be different than you expected, and you'd find out why. But most of the time when it was a topic, the associations, the lobbyists, everything work on your constituents to email you and letters to you pushing for legislation. You could go call them, ask the people why they did this, what's in this bill, do you know what's in this bill, things like that. And you just listen to them.
Yeah. How often would you say you worked with the other party to get legislation passed?
Quite a bit, especially at the end of the session. When it goes to conference committee, you could, bills get held up and everything else because they want their bill for this, for that, and things like that. It's just, you just have to work with them. You're not going to get it passed. You're not going to get it out of conference committee unless both parties agree.
Right.
So you have to learn to gain friendship with as many people possible during the session, so that when it comes down the conference committee, if you're friends with somebody, of course they're going to listen a whole lot better, and there's going to be things that they want added into the bill in conference committee. You just have to take it a step at a time. I'd have bills in conference committee that I'd go over and talk to the staff over in the Senate with the Republican staff, trying to find out what they wanted, what we needed to work out, and put the bills together to get through conference committee. It's an art.
Yeah, that's true.
Enjoyed it. Yeah.
What was the atmosphere like between members of the different parties when you served?
We were pretty friendly. There's no hatefulness or anything like that. I mean, you just got along as friends. You just had a different point of view. That's all.
Okay. Did that relationship change at all over the course of your service, or was it about the same the whole time?
As you got to know more people, it got friendlier. You'd know them, and they'd be honest with you and say, "Hey, John, I know you got this bill coming down, but I just can't vote for it."
Okay.
Because of this, but they're still friends.
Yeah, sure. What were the differences between the House and Senate?
Oh, the Senate, of course, is only 50 people, and they cover twice the area. The Senate was solid Republican then and still is today. So you knew that if you were going to get a bill passed, you had to go and work with both sides or it wouldn't get passed.
Yeah, okay. And how influential would you say party leadership was to getting legislation passed?
Very important. The President pro tem of the Senate and the Speaker of the House control a lot. They have a lot of power. They assign the party chairs and the committee chairs and the membership of the committees. So you had to go and make sure that you kept them satisfied with your votes, your actions, if you wanted to get appointments to the committees that you wanted to serve on.
Yeah. Did you ever go against party leadership when you served?
Well, not really during conferences. When I'm trying to think of what year it was when Pat Bauer became the Speaker of the House. I'm trying to think if that was 2002. I'm not sure. But during then, it was, the party leadership all going for the speakership after John Gregg didn't run for re-election. And, there you gotta be careful. It doesn't do you any good if you vote against the person that becomes speaker, and you just won't get your committee assignments, which are very important. So
Right.
you got a little bit there, and you get phone calls from all of them trying to steal your support, things like that. Just it's part of the game.
Yeah. How did your legislative service affect your family life?
Legislative service were very important. When you have an idea for legislation or have idea for amendments to bills, you'd look if you had a issue that you were working on and trying to get it into another bill that was similar content. Legislative Service Agency was fantastic. You sit down with them, explain what you're trying to do, the areas you believe that need to be changed, and work with them on it. They're super good, especially the long-time experience one. They know right away how to put that together. And it takes a lot of work because they have to comb through the rest of the code and find conflicts that need to be corrected and things like that. So it'd be very difficult to do without Legislative Service Agency.
Right. Was it difficult for you to balance being a legislator and maintaining your family life and stuff?
Yes, it is. Back then, I don't know how they do it now, but back then, basically, we went Monday through Thursday, and and would sometimes have a short thing Friday morning, but mainly it was 4 days a week. And then when you're back home, though, you have all the meet your legislative sessions in the different counties and other events going on that you tried to be at. So yes, it does put a strain on the family.
Sure. How influential were lobbyists when you served?
They're very influential. They can point out what a bill is going to do or what a bill won't do, and why it's being proposed, who the lobbyist represents, why they believe it's so important. The lobbyists were great to work with. Even if you disagreed with them, if you just shot straight with them, you didn't have a problem. The lobbyists seem to have a problem with those that say, yes, I'll support it, and then the person goes in and votes against it. But if you're just straight with them and say, yes, I'll support that, or no, I'm sorry, I just can't support that, or I'm not sure yet. But as long as you're straight with them, you can work with the lobbyist well, and then lobbyists also will research information for you if you're interested in something with their field that they're working with, their association or what have you. They're fun to work with because they'll get the research done for you.
Right. So was it easy to determine if a lobbyist was trustworthy or not? Or, did you ever have any issues where you weren't sure if you could trust a lobbyist? Or?
Oh, yeah, when you first made them, and then sometimes, or another legislator will say, hey, whatever you do, just be careful with so-and-so. They're not always a straight shooter.
Okay.
I wouldn't confront there wasn't that many, very minimal, that were like that, because they wouldn't last very long in that field if they were that way.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Do you think that campaign donations or gifts had much influence on a politician's decision-making when they served, or?
Yes, it does. When a constituent calls that you remember them at a fundraiser or whatever, you're going to put a little bit more time into listening what they have to say than a person that you never met before or whatever. You're going to make sure you hear fully out on the issues. A lot of times when they're against something, if you got to ask and find out why and what's this going to do. And so oftentimes you research it, get back with it, and say no. The lobbyist or the legislative service agency says no, that does not affect that part. It's specifically in there, but we can go add an amendment just to make absolutely certain that it will not affect that part. If they hadn't called and asked you about it, you wouldn't have known to do that research.
Yeah.
But yes, a person that has given you a contribution, you're going to make sure you listened. I mean, I'm not saying means you're not going to listen to those give contributions, but the ones that do, you absolutely certain to make sure they get listened to.
Yeah, that makes total sense. How influential was redistricting when you served?
Oh, huge. It was redistrict in 2001. So it was the Democrats still had control, and they put together the House redistricting, and the Republicans had control of the Senate, and they took care of the Senate redistricting. It was pretty well mutual agreement between the Senate and the House that the party controlling them would handle their redistricting. And of course, party members serve from both parties on the redistricting committee, but they have the party in control has the votes to push forward their redistricting. It does affect, in my area, there was quite a bit of votes that were taken out of my district and patted on to others that needed help, but it also, at a time when my district was turning Republican, it took quite a few votes out of my district that were strong Democrat votes. But it's easy to look back now, you can say that, but at the time that's hard to see.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So what would you change about the legislative process based on your experiences?
There's lots of proposals people have put forward about having a nonpartisan outside group do them. Different states have tried it, and it goes back and forth, but I don't know of any method that could be done that would make it totally fair. No matter if there's humans involved, there's going to be bias in the redistricting. If it gets too loaded on one area, we see how the court decisions are on that. And but I don't know the answer there, because different states have tried different things, but nothing seems to be the absolute perfect way to redistrict. But it does matter. Yeah,
it seems like a difficult situation for people to figure out.
Yep, it's hard. Really hard. And you sit there and try to keep counties together as much as possible. But if you're going to go truly split the 100 seats of the House by population, it's really hard to keep total counties together.
Yeah.
And you may be able to keep a couple counties, but there's going to be a lot of counties that are going to be split in half, so that's no more fair to them than the counties that are kept together. It's very hard to do, but it has to be done.
Right. What would you say were the most controversial legislative issues during your time in the General Assembly?
Controversial? Mainly let's just be the budget every 2 years.
Okay.
And there the Republicans tried to get more of the public education funds to go into private schools through vouchers. That'd probably be the main issue. They're trying to think. That was probably be the main one was financing on public education. Probably be the most controversial. I went and carried through with Senator Lindo Hume in the Senate, where the constitutional amendment to remove the inventory tax, and we carried that. But what was so funny about it is that here we're moving and everybody's for doing away with the inventory tax, and it started coming towards the end there, and all of a sudden the Chamber of Commerce wasn't so sure that they were in favor of it anymore after it was ready to pass. And they said, well, if you reduce the inventory tax, that doesn't help any of the administrative type jobs of lawyers, doctors, things like that don't have inventory. So that wouldn't affect them at all. So that would mean that the other taxes would go up because they don't have inventory, and they went back and forth on it. They finally decided not to be against it. But it was I sort of laughed at that. Here we're working to do away with inventory tax, and all of a sudden the Chamber of Commerce wasn't so big in favor of it. It did pass the thing, and then passed 4 year, or the next session passed again, went on the ballot, and that became Constitution Amendment was when Indiana did away with the property inventory tax. So a portion of the property tax, the inventory, and off the personal property tax. But I sort of laughed at that when the Chamber of Commerce coming to me and said, well, we have a hard time finding support for it. And you're going, we're doing away with inventory tax, helps every single business that has inventory, and you're not in favor of it. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's funny. Okay. Let's see. I also noticed that it looked like you had some involvement with some debates regarding property taxes and the cigarette tax. Do you remember that at all?
Well, yeah, they go. It's the property tax is when it gets confusing, but just so we're clear, the property tax normally they separate in Indiana. They call the land and the building as real estate tax, and then other your equipment in the factory and things like that is property tax. And then we used to also have included in that property tax was the inventory. And I would always was campaigning about the dumbest thing you can do is charge you want business to come to Indiana, but we're going to charge you for your tax on your inventory for a product that you have for sale, and we're going to charge you tax on your equipment for manufacturing things. And I'm just sitting there, how are we supposed to recruit business to come to Indiana if we have the personal property tax, on equipment and inventory? And it's obvious, of course, getting rid of the inventory tax in Indiana, what it's done is you see the whole west side and northwest side of Indiana with all those warehouses now that store inventory and ship it out through the airport every morning to get fast delivery of inventory around. But all those places wouldn't be there if Indiana still charged property tax on inventory. It's just, you drive on Interstate 70 West and you drive by warehouse after warehouse after warehouse after warehouse. And those wouldn't be there if we hadn't worked together to get inventory tax taken away.
Yeah, okay. Let's see, I also saw that there was some debate going on regarding gambling legislation. Do you remember that?
Yes, the main one was in French Lick when they tried, and they did do it. They tried to change the law of the gambling in French Lick, and unfortunately, gambling is fun, and things people do. But unfortunately, in casinos with the slot machines and things like that, the odds are so against the person. It's almost like taking advantage of people. And in an area like French Lick, trying so hard, it's just a rural area. And, I just didn't think too highly of expanding there. It did pass. One thing on that was when the bill was coming down the House, I went through the bill line for line, and I found a bunch of areas in the bill that didn't make sense. It was sort of humorous, and I was reading those off, and the legislators laughing, and it passed, and then they amended it to correct those errors that we had found. But the French Lick Casino has worked out very well through the Cook Foundation. It's pretty well owns it and runs it, and it's run very well, and so it has worked out. And but in that, I just couldn't see the casino being a smart thing to do in that area. It did work out.
Okay. What about legislation regarding assault weapons? Do you remember anything like that?
In my district, the constituents are very pro-gun, and so I supported gun rights, and but get some people in a district would be against it, but in the surveys and in my door-to-door stuff, they were very strongly pro-gun.
Okay.
The percentage of people that do hunting here, things like that, and then the people with self-defense. And I supported the gun rights because of my constituents.
Mm-hmm. So was that kind of like in terms of like your political philosophy when it came to representing your district, were you a type of legislator that always tried to support what the majority of your constituents would support, or would you have like personal things, like personal ideas that you would go by as well?
I went by the constituents' viewpoint on issues,
okay.
And sometimes it would be against my personal thing. I never was a big fan of the death penalty, but my constituents were very high in favor of allowing the death penalty, so I supported the death penalty. I mean, it's just sort of on that line that I would go by the constituents' viewpoint just about all the time on that. Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
On the pro-life issue, the constituents were highly pro-life, so I supported pro-life, and that's my personal too. But the gun rights, I sort of think, well, there got to be some control, but the supporters really want the right to own guns.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting to see, like, because I guess that's a kind of a question legislators always have to ask themselves when they first get into office. Like, okay, so how do I balance my personal views with what my constituents want? So.
It's funny because the legislators, we talk about that amongst ourselves, and that used to be something where I say, well, the Democrat legislators support their constituents. The Republican legislators will support their personal opinion. That was always I would imagine they would say the same thing back, but I remember those comments like that.
Yeah. I'd say the last thing I saw in the newspaper was like pollution penalties. Do you remember that?
What kind of penalties?
Like pollution penalties. Like a business getting. I think it was something like a business getting fined, but also it'd be like published in the newspaper for like if they violated some pollution law, and some debate.
It's called a solution penalty?
No, pollution with a P.
Oh, pollution penalty.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have, in my district, you have farmers, you have industry and things like that. They're willing to work on it, but they were we weren't ready to go put super stiff penalties to the point that businesses would leave my district or leave Indiana. And I had a problem with that, those huge penalties, yes. And it always seemed like when there's a pollution violation thing, like they always come out with these super high penalties they smack them with, and then the lawyers have to go back and forth and negotiate it and get it down to reasonable. And I just thought it'd be a lot better just to get reasonable right off the bat and get stuff taken care of without running all the industry out of Indiana.
Ah, yes. Sure. Yeah. And so I guess some big picture now, reflective questions. When did you decide to leave the Indiana General Assembly and why?
I got defeated in 2004,
Okay.
my fifth election, and it was a close one. It was 83 votes,
Wow.
and it was Troy Woodruff ran against me, and Troy did a great job of getting out and campaigning. And that would have been the 04. Was that Bush's second? I'm not sure.
Might have been, yeah.
I'm not sure. Whoever it was 04. It was, but he did a good campaign, and it came down, and then that's when the southern rural area of Indiana was slowly but surely turning from Democrat to Republican like it is now. But it was a close election, and it was 83 votes out of the 25,000 votes. So it was a close one, and it's all pretty well as electronic voting. I reviewed everything, and it wouldn't have been a waste of time to do a recall. So conceded, but yeah, that was 2004 when I was defeated.
Yeah, okay. How would you summarize your time as a state legislator overall?
I loved it. I learned a lot. I got some stuff done that I didn't want it done, and met a lot of people. Still keep contact today with former legislators. A lot on Facebook, a lot on emails, but you still see them, still keep contact with them, and it's well worth it for just the number of people you meet and become friends with.
Yeah. What lessons did you learn from your experiences?
Main thing is take care of problems as soon as you can. When there's disagreements, get facial contact with the person and discuss it and figure out how it can be worked out rather than letting it drag on and get worse. If you got disagreement on legislation, as soon as you can, work it out, because oftentimes legislator gets contacted by one side before you get contact, and they've already made their decision or committed, and if you had been there early, you might have got their commitment. So it's just, you got to do it. You got to get to them as quick as you can on the issues and get your commitments or make the changes they need to get their commitment.
Yeah, true. Did you have any regrets as a legislator?
Oh, I don't know. When we had in the 2003 budget, we had some projects put in there for my district, and then the budget got tight, and those funds never got distributed because the state was running out of money. The budget was tight, and they cut back. But I like mine to be, distributed out. But there's others that knew about that there was going to be a budget problem and got their funds distributed in their districts ASAP. And it wasn't until later when I'm sitting there going, wait a second, and was some monies promised to mayors for helping with their fire department or what have you were canceled. And, you just had to go to them and say, sorry, I got it approved, but the funds aren't going to be released. The money's not there. And that was a little difficult there. But if I had fought for it to be a little sooner, maybe they would have got it. No, I enjoyed it. 8 years was a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like it. What was your proudest moment?
I don't know. What one time it was 50-50, and they went and I'm trying to remember where all that took place, but the Republicans going to walk out so there wouldn't be a majority and stuff, and it got in thing, and they started debate, and I rose and said, point of order, there's no debate on a motion to table, and or was it a motion to recess? Don't forget. But anyways, it was funny because then they go up there, all discuss, and they come out. Representative Frenz, you're correct. There is no debate. We have to take the vote. And then the next year, and the Rules Committee changed the parliamentary procedure in the House to allow debate on a motion to recess. So that was sort of funny there, but a lot of fun when your little thinking takes effect.
Yeah, sure.
But it was fun to be able to get bills passed and help out your constituents.
What advice would you give to future legislators or even current legislators?
Just because you got one constituent wants a bill passed or whatever doesn't mean you need to go forward with it. You need to check out with more people and then find out who that's going to affect and check with them too before you go through with legislation, because sometimes you could get pushing on some legislation that nobody's in favor of. And we discussed earlier, contact with the other legislators to find out where they have disagreements with your legislation and try to work those changes out as soon as you can. When there's a bill passing through with somebody else carrying, if there's something that you would like to add to that to help an area that you're looking, those type of things, it's called be friendly and work with others.
Yeah, makes sense. What, in your opinion, is the most important work of the Indiana General Assembly?
Well, of course, it's the budget, and that's the main thing. And then look out for what the state laws need to be. Federal laws have their area, state laws have their area, but the budget is the number one.
Yeah, it seems to be a pretty big one.
Yep.
What would you say the public does not know about the Indiana General Assembly and how it operates?
It's amazing how few legislators have control. The speaker and committee chairmen have the most power, and some legislators don't have much power. People don't realize how strong some of the legislators are over others. That's the way the system's set up, and you have to work with it. So when you get in there, you need to become friends with others and work out agreements between you. But the constituents have no idea about how powerful some legislators are over others.
Yeah, Yeah, I guess it's hard for them to see the power dynamics at play.
Yeah.
How has the state of Indiana changed since you moved to the state?
The biggest thing is Indiana's been working towards more trying to get the more of the technology and more of the medical research things to locate in Indiana. Indiana, of course, used to be the huge in manufacturing of automobiles and recreation vehicles. And as that stuff starts changing, Indiana had to go for other corporations, businesses, and it does help. Indiana has when they're adding pro teams. Before, Indiana wasn't much of a pro sport thing. They monopolized on the college sports with the NCAA and things like that, but with them getting the Colts and the Pacers, and now soccer and everything else, it has helped Indiana. We have to have those type of things to get corporations to believe Indiana is the place to locate, with a low cost of living, low taxation, and it's a good place to go, good place to live.
Yeah, sure. How do you think the people of Indiana have changed?
Well, it's used to be the southern portion of Indiana, and the urban areas were predominantly Democrat, and that has changed a lot. And the southern Indiana is no longer dominant Democrat, and we're even seeing some of the urban areas going more Republican, but then we're seeing other areas going Democrat. We're starting to see some of the donut areas around Indianapolis go stronger on Democrats. So it's interesting to follow the party changes, and it's up to the parties to press their issues, what your neighbor believes. When everybody in town's starting to say they support so-and-so, it starts going towards that. Indiana has been changing on its vote concentrations in certain areas. As you can tell from the legislature, it's super majority for Republicans now in the House and Senate.
Yeah, interesting.
And it used to be, like I said, we talked before, used to be 50-50.
Right. Yeah, that is a big change. And let's see, final question. What do you want the people of Indiana to know about their influence on the General Assembly?
The people don't exercise as much as they can. Majority of people never do anything, no comments. We still have a huge number of people that don't even vote. And of course, that's nationwide, but it is in Indiana also. But people need to look at the candidates, decide, and get out and vote. And then they need to contact the legislators when their viewpoint on issues is very easy to do, but it does count. And very few people do it.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that I did not ask about that you wanted to mention, or?
Oh, I wish there was more women involved. Women have issues that are very important that don't get looked at. We're starting to get more, but it's still dominant male. It'd be a whole lot better if it was 50-50.
Okay.
But we're starting to see more and more getting interested in it, but it is important. I wish it'd get closer and closer.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot better for our laws, be a lot better for people to move to Indiana when they know that we care about those issues.
Yeah, that's true. That definitely makes sense. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of this project. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. You're a great interviewer. You've obviously been doing this for quite a while.
Thanks, I appreciate that.